listeners, it's me again, back with another For the Fan Show. And I'm not alone, listeners, I'm not alone. It's Group D, and Keeno's with me. How you doing, Keeno?
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm fine, yeah. Looking forward to talking about these teams.
Just checking, you seem shocked I asked. I'm just making sure you're all right before we continue.
Yes, I am. I mean, anyone who doesn't know, you're sort of behind the scenes. We're doing these in a bit of a bunch, so it's quite nice.
Oh, well, maybe, allegedly.
It's quite nice for you to ask me how I am every 10 minutes.
I'd just like to know, Keeno. I don't ask you enough.
I was as good as I was half an hour ago.
Excellent. Jack, how are you, my friend?
That's the real question.
I'm okay. I'm looking forward to this group, actually, just because it's... I don't want to say it's a weird group.
You just have.
It's a bit of a mixed bunch.
Right, there is a mixed bunch. The group then consists of Croatia, Czech Republic, Turkey, and Espanyol, the holders, which seems a bit weird because they've been off the boil recently. But that is then the Group D teams, and let's talk about them in alphabetical order. We'll start with Croatia, who finished second in their group behind Italy. No disgrace in that at all. Their previous best at the Euros was in 2008. They came in the got into the quarterfinals, and they've got some very interesting players, Jack. I'm talking Modric, I'm talking Rakitic. But
I was about to say their midfield is stacked. They've got a few experienced players behind them, to be fair, but you look at that midfield, that is where Croatia kind of shine. And they're a side who, they have a lot of kind of talented younger players who I feel like are maybe just a few years off really making a massive impact on the international stage.
Yeah.
And obviously there's players like Halilovic who just haven't made it. Obviously the hotly tipped youngster who made the move to Spain a few years ago.
Still very young.
Of course. This Croatia team, I feel like for a few players it might be their last kind of farewell. Players like Mandzukic. He must be late 20s now.
He might see another one, but Cerna definitely, or 34.
Yeah, well, the captain. Yeah. And Kaluka feels like he's been around a while as well. It's a side where I don't feel like anyone's going to talk about them winning the whole thing. But they're the kind of team who could just slip through the net a little bit and make it quite far without anyone really realising. And then, in hindsight, it kind of seems obvious why they're able to achieve that, particularly Rakitic and Modric in midfield. Those two, that is a pairing made in heaven.
Yeah, I think you've touched on it there. I think their midfield is very, very exciting. I think keeper-wise, a little bit of inexperience. They've got a 31-year-old keeper who's played... Well, quite a lot. I think he might. I don't know if he's Monaco's first choice, Subasic. I'm not entirely sure, but that's one area they're not particularly strong. Going slightly further forward, you mentioned Choluka and Cerna, very experienced back line. Lots of caps in their back line. Actually, you mentioned Choluka, 88 caps. Cerna's got 130 caps.
That's good, isn't it? Is that the most in the tournament, or is this?
If it's not the most, I bet it's top three. Top three by for sure. Moving forward then, Keeno, Modric, Kovacic, Rakitic, Perisic, Kodic's there. There's some very exciting talent. I think the interesting thing is, of course, Spain in this group. And Modric and Rakitic obviously play with quite a lot of Spanish players. Their clubs, obviously Barcelona and Real Madrid. Do you think
and Kovacic, of course.
Of course, yeah. Do you think? And we're talking about Mandzukic further forward, has spent time in La Liga as well. Do we think that gives them a little bit of an advantage over perhaps Czech Republic and Turkey, that they're going to know the style of play that Spain operate with? They're part of that almost.
Yeah, I think it's a sort of a wider point about sort of international, like domestic players coming up against their international rivals. I think it certainly will count for something. I think maybe not so much against Spain, because I feel like the way that Spain play and have played for the last few years is quite difficult to sort of, although you know what's going to happen, if they're on it, which they haven't been in the last couple of years, if they are on their game, it's very difficult to counter. I think that although Rakitic and Modric may know what is going to go, how their midfield is going to play, in particular the midfield, they may not be able to do a lot about it. However, as Jack said, I mean, you tend to ask for star men, but I will say that the Croatia team, for me, their youth and their potential is one thing that sticks out for me. You mentioned Koric sort of earlier. He's only 19. It's obviously his first, breaking quickly.
You might not know this, Keeno, but he's a Football Manager wonder kid.
I presumed he would be. But yeah, very highly rated. Obviously, Kovacic got a big move. Hasn't really played very much for Real this season, but it's still a very good talent. I think that this tournament may come 2 years too late for a few players and a few years too early for others. I feel like Croatia are missing sort of a group of players in their prime who could really sort of kick on.
I don't know if I agree with that. I feel like Modric at 30 has had one of the best seasons he's had in his career. I think.
Oh yeah, no, I agree
know.
that. I mean, Modric,
defensively,
Rakitic,
perhaps I can see your point defensively.
Modric, yeah, and I feel going forward they're a bit light as well. Modric and Rakitic, obviously we know, are fantastic players. They could probably be enough, in all honesty, to get Croatia out the group at least on their own. Yeah. But I think going further than that, I feel they lack a bit of strength in depth that they may develop in the next few years with a lot of these young players. So yeah, I agree that they have some excellent players now, but whether they have enough of them to really go deep in the tournament, I would question.
Do you think it's quite a nice blend, though, Jack? We're not really talking about Mandzukic. We are kind of focusing on Rakitic and Modric because they are kind of the marquee players within the side. But Mandzukic has been at Juve this season. I mean, Juve have just done it again, haven't they?
They do Juve things, don't they?
Mandzukic is part of that. So I think there's certainly a winning mentality throughout this Croatian side. And we talk about a lot of the other nations. Like we'll come on to Czech Republic and Turkey in a minute, actually, and this will apply to them. That in this Croatian side, there's quite a lot of players with winning mentalities. And I think, especially when you play against Spain in a big international stage, that's quite important to have players that are used to winning, because there's going to be that fire in them that, yeah, great, we do well for our club sides, but we want more than that. You've got Champions League winners and league winners in this side that not every national team, especially at sort of La Liga level, have the luxury of having. Do you think that will play a part in this group?
I think there is a point to prove, and I think a few of these players, they are based, of course, in Croatia, and particularly younger players. I think it's Rog who's the left winger. I don't want to get the Croatian team he plays for wrong. I have a feeling it's Dynamo Zagreb.
It is Zagreb.
There's players like him.
A lot of Zagreb players.
This is a game, like a tournament for a lot of these younger players, just in general, to put themselves on a map. And whilst I don't necessarily endorse players signing, players off kind of international tournament kind of performances, this is one of the biggest stage for Croatian players, especially if they're not a nation you associate with getting to every World Cup, to really put themselves on the map and try and find themselves a move this summer afar.
I think that it's a good point, and people will be motivated to that. You mentioned the strikers, you mentioned Mandzukic. He's only scored one of Croatia's goals in qualifying, and while obviously he's been part of a winning team in Juventus domestically, who basically win all the time. So I mean, yeah. It's not so much of a big thing for me, I think, playing for Juventus in Serie A. But he's only scored one goal, and we mentioned sort of earlier in previous groups in Northern Ireland, it's almost the mirror of that, where you have people performing much better for their national team than they do domestically. I think Mandzukic is the sort of the opposite of that, and he is their first choice number 9, and he's not, by all accounts, playing well for them. So I think that's where they could really struggle going forward. Yeah,
I will say he's got 4 goals in 3 appearances this year.
To be fair, though, I need to complain about Croatia. I know we've talked about them more than perhaps we planned already. Who the hell plays San Marino in their last friendly before the tournament?
To be fair, Jack, a team that wins 10-0. That's
like, good what's the point in that? Like, everyone else is taking on, other teams in the competition. Croatia, San Marino. Do you want a game?
Is it a confidence thing, though? Is it putting your team out?
Does kicking a dog repeatedly make you feel better about yourself?
I mean, I've not kicked enough dogs to know, Jack. Actually, Keeno, to counter your point, where you talked about Mandzukic's goal scoring record, and then I came back with,
qualifying.
He's got 4 in 3 this year. He did get 3 against San Marino. So,
well, there you go then.
Yeah,
and it is 1 goal in the 20 that they scored in qualifying.
It was a 15-minute hat trick, which I quite like.
Point proven, I feel.
Kalinic got a hat trick as well. I'd like to think, actually, I'm not entirely sure. I'd like to think Mandzukic came off, Kalinic came on and got himself a hat trick. I'm not entirely sure if that's what happened, but I'd like to think that's exactly what happened. I'm not entirely sure.
I don't approve of that. I don't approve.
So you're upset that Croatia
I don't want to get
played
angry with Croatia. I don't have anything against Croatia. And as I said, I think they could be a bit of a dark horse in some ways and be a team who overperform. Czech Republic, on the other hand, they're a team who, for me, I associate them with always seemingly doing fairly well in the Euros, despite me never knowing as a kid any of their players. I look at their team now. Obviously, they've got Rosicky. And they've got Czech. And I look at the rest of that team, I scratch my head a little bit.
While with the Czech Republic, I think we've sort of mentioned how important organisation, sort of defensive solidity is for slightly smaller teams. And the Czech Republic are a smaller team who did have a fantastic generation of players who arguably a little bit, it's quite clear that they don't have many of those players that were so good. Maybe
many fond memories of Milan Baros.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Euro 2004 and in particular was their big one, and that generation is gone now. But what is in place is quite a well organised sort of team. I think that while they might struggle to beat the teams like Croatia, just lacking a little bit of quality, they I'm sort of cautiously optimistic for their chances in this group, particularly as we mentioned Croatia's sort of lack of bite going forward.
They were runners up in '96, and I think a lot of people have got very fond memories, especially England fans as well. I think as a nation, we sort of think of Croatia as part of the story of England's '96, that we would have played Croatia had we beaten Germany in '96. And I think a lot of people still sort of rate them because of that. They did have a good tournament in 2004. Players like Nedved, Balos were sort of in their pomp at that point. But since then, they got knocked out of the group stage in 2008. They got to the quarterfinals in 2012. I could be wrong, I don't think they've been to a World Cup since then. I don't think 2006 World Cup, but haven't been at 2010 or 14. So I don't think this squad's anywhere near as good as it has been in the past. If we've got any Czech fans listening, I'm sorry. I think they'll come bottom of the group. I don't think they'll get a point. I actually think they might lose every game. Because
really?
I really think, I know Thomas Rosicky, he's probably one of their better players. He's 35. I know he's their captain, he's 35. He's not been exactly prolific for Arsenal. He's arguably their best player, and he's not playing week in, week out for Arsenal. I don't really rate this Czech team at all.
When we were looking at their team, I was really surprised they played South Korea in their last friendly. That was a little bit weird.
And they lost as well, though.
Yeah, they beat Russia, though. So
yeah, but I don't rate Russia either. I guess we kind of touched on it before in the previous show with England's group, but I don't rate Russia either. I think
Group B available for listening, of course. We did a review on that.
I honestly don't think Czech Republic are that good, and I think the idea of them is actually far better than the reality of them. I think they're quite inexperienced. They've probably got like 3 or 4 very experienced players. Their back line is relatively experienced. It's been around a long time. It's aged actually. I'm looking through the numbers now. They've got 5 players over 30. In their back line from players that were selected. They've got not exactly prolific strikers. I mean, Nesid, is it Nesid? Is that how you'd say it? But he's been around a lot. He's 26. I feel like he's been around a lot longer than that. He will probably be one of their key men within there, but I just don't think they've got anywhere near enough. I think they'll finish bottom of the group. There, I've said it. I mean, prove me wrong, Czech Republic, but don't think you can, mate. Sorry, everyone.
If there was any Czech sponsors looking to sponsor the show, I don't endorse anything Ben said.
If Petr Cech is listening, do you think that, honestly, I'll come to you both then. How do you think they'll get on in this group?
Go on, Jack.
In terms of a position?
I think they'll come joint third with Croatia.
Well, that is fascinating. I can't wait to talk about Turkey in a moment. Keeno?
I mean, having watched Turkey in the England game, obviously, they were playing far superior opposition. It was quite difficult to gauge their quality. I think I agree with Jack actually that the sort of Turkey will finish second, and then it will be a battle for that third place between.
Wow, I do not agree with this. That's interesting. Okay, well, we'll come on to Turkey, and we'll discuss why, I guess. Turkey go into the tournament with relatively high spirits. Of course, England beat them, but we're going to win it. So
we beat everyone.
Yeah, we beat everyone.
No shame in that.
Apart from that, stretch back all the way to March 2015. They drew with the Netherlands, and since then they've won every game apart from a draw against Latvia. Admittedly, not that good, but they've beat the Netherlands 3-0. They've beaten the Czech Republic, a team obviously in their group. Again, 2 teams in the same qualifying group. I'm not on board with this. Don't like it. Beat Sweden as well, beat Austria, beat Montenegro, beat Slovenia. They go into the tournament with, I would say, probably quite high spirits. But again, I mean, you've both said that you think they can finish second. I think there's more quality in this Turkey side than the Czech Republic side. I don't necessarily think they're as good as Croatia. I don't think they're anywhere near as good as Croatia. I go on a limb. I feel like I should open the floor here to one of you. Who wants this? Who wants to take on Turkey?
I'm
Jack.
I'm willing.
Jack.
Okay, I feel
Jack,
like
take it. I'm willing. I feel like when a teacher says it wants to come do their speaking and listening. I feel like you've stepped up there, Jack, but you didn't want to. Go on.
I feel like for me, Turkey as a league, the Turkish league is a league that really doesn't get a lot of love in Western Europe. It's a league that we don't hear a lot about. Players going there and just never coming back. I'm looking at you, Podolski. And I like the Turkish side. I feel like it's a side that has a few names you recognise, like Kanafaloglu. I can't say his name.
Chanaloglu. I'll help you out.
Turan, obviously, he had the transfer ban, so this year's been a bit of a write-off for him in some ways. I feel like this Turkish side is a bit like the Croatian side, but a few years on. And I feel like maybe they don't have the massive star players, but I feel like with Croatia, you're looking at their midfield to be their real strength. Whereas you look at this Turkish side, a lot of experienced players, a lot of players who play alongside each other at clubs like Fenerbahce, Galatasaray. And I watched them against England, and I don't know whether or not it was England not playing that well, but Turkey kind of surprised me with what they offered. And I don't know. I feel like they're a team who perhaps, as I said, they don't get their love because a lot of them play domestically.
I think that's quite true.
And I think they could do something.
Yeah, and a lot of them are, as you say, sort of members of the Besiktas, Fenerbahce, Galatasaray sort of trio in the Turkish league. They do have a lot of quality. I mean, and this isn't even just the sort of big names that a lot of European fans would know, like Çalhanoğlu and Turan and Nuri Sahin, etc. Selçuk İnan was a player who I actually saw playing, I think, in pre-season last year, or maybe the year before, against alongside with Yilmaz against Arsenal. I went to the Emirates Cup. I was really impressed by them. And I was actually really impressed by, I think, İnan in the England game. And they do have a lot of quality. They've got a lot of strength and depth. And you mentioned, Ben, at the beginning of this section, that their form, bar 1 or 2, obviously the England lost, no shame in that, but their form's been excellent.
Beat the Dutch 3-0.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's beating the Dutch at the moment. But yeah, their form is excellent coming into this. And I feel like their strength, maybe in terms of quality, may go deeper than that of Croatia, who are fantastically skilled in the centre of the park and not so much in other areas.
I think the other thing with Turkey is they've been a bit of a chronic underachiever over the last few years. And I think that is one reason why people don't necessarily rate them so much. They've not made it to that many international competitions. When they have, they've not made a massive splash. And I think they're a team where they've had this big standard, big up, particularly by the Turkish fans, that they've got to meet, and it's a case of
they like to big them up, mate.
With that more experience, can they match that expectation? I mean, I went to watch this. I went to watch Fenerbahce v Everton in a pre-season friendly years ago.
Okay.
And it was one of the craziest games I've ever been to. Like the Turkish fans, you said they big themselves up.
Some of the best.
It's crazy.
Admittedly, most dangerous as well. But some of the best atmospheres in world football.
I honestly feel like you're both overselling Turkey quite a lot. I think they've got 3. I think Turan, Sahin, and Çalhanoğlu. They are their 3 best players. They all moved away. That's kind of the point to make. Galatasaray had a poor season in Turkey. Really poor season. The worst season they've had in years. I think there's 3 or 4 Galatasaray players. I think the Besiktas players might have to pull them through. Besiktas won the league. Yeah. I'm not sure that... Like you look at how Turkey have done in the last sort of, let's say, since 2010. So they didn't qualify for the World Cup. They didn't qualify for the Euros after that. And they didn't qualify for the World Cup again. I think they're kind of... They finished 3rd in the Euros in 2008. But that's 8 years ago. That's a long time ago.
Their last defeat, if you go past the Liverpool game... was actually against Brazil.
But what I'm saying is they've not just getting a pizza fun. Their tournament football, though, Keeno, I don't think is up to scratch. Like, they're not even qualifying a lot of the time. So there's something there that's a problem. I don't think the squad's overly
possibly,
good.
And you do point out their records of qualifying for past tournaments. One big plus point I would give for them is their manager, who is Fatih Terim, who is obviously vastly experienced, has had some good results, has managed, mostly in Turkey, but also in Italy, I think. Milan.
Milan and Fiorentina for a short time. It was early 90s, but the fact you've mentioned that, it blasts the past for me. That's weird. Yeah.
So he's a very, very experienced coach, and he came back in 2013 after having a bit of time away. And I think he has started to make things work again, and that was in 2013. So maybe it would be more fair to base this team on the results after that, which of course have been very good. So I think there's a chance for them here.
I dare say the last time they did well in the tournament, he was manager in 2008. He was manager when they came 3rd.
Of course.
But I feel like the landscape's changed quite a lot in that time. In Turkey, I think Croatia are more of the Turkey now. Like I think Croatia have far more about them, and they're in this group. And I So I kind of think that they will do better.
I think, before we touch on Spain, I think this group, other than them who I think will qualify in first, is a pretty exciting group. It's quite open, as our sort of varied predictions have shown. I think there's a lot that can happen in this group.
I feel bad because I feel like I've been quite harsh on Turkey. I really like Sahin, I really like Çalhanoğlu, and I really like Arda Turan, and I do hope they kind of set the tournament on fire. I hope they have that. You know, when you sort of see Chile at World Cups in years gone by, and they'd have these players that would just sort of change the game in an instant. I kind of hope Turkey bring that in the Euros.
And very recently, of course.
I just don't necessarily think that
I feel
they
like
have.
one of the issues you've got, Ben, is I'm back. You're backing the Czech Republic and Turkey into a corner. All that one of those teams needs to do is beat the other, and they're in the knockout stages, and then it's a bit of a anything can happen at that point.
Yeah, but getting past the first knockout stage is like getting to the knockout stage this year is like almost easier than going out.
Oh, of course, but I feel like with a knockout game, a one-off match, a lot can happen, and if your big players turn up, then you've got a chance of just going on a wonder run. For that's been shown in the past when you look at World Cups and Euros.
If I can give Turkey any credit, I think they'll finish above Czech Republic. Like I don't rate Czech Republic at all. I feel like throughout these sort of preview shows, we've been quite kind to a lot of teams, and I'm giving it to Turkey, Czech Republic, and saying actually I don't think you're that good. So we'll have to wait and see. I feel like we're 20 minutes in. We've not yet spoken about the former holders of this tournament, boys.
Well, the current
I can't
holders.
believe they're holding this.
Well, the current holders.
It's such a weird team, this Spanish side. The last 4 years of Spanish football has just been bizarre.
Yeah, I think the World Cup was sort of so ridiculously underwhelming, wasn't it, that we don't really know what to make of Spain going into this.
Yeah, exactly. I think that it's been such a long time, really, the last Euros, since we've seen them really a good sample size of performances in a big competition.
Yeah,
that it is very difficult. And
they went out of the group, didn't they? Sorry, they went out of the group of the World Cup.
And their qualifying campaign has been, and some of the friendlies as well, hasn't always been convincing either. So it's quite difficult to say.
Yeah, well, they qualified as you'd expect Spain to.
As you'd expect,
they won the group, and obviously they've won the tournament for the last two occasions. They've won it back to back. It's difficult. I think in years gone by, there's been a bit of a standout name that you can kind of pin your hopes on. Probably in the World Cup, arguably they didn't really have that. We didn't really know what they were going to do. And going into this tournament as well, there isn't a clear player that you look to and go, this is the guy that's going to pull them through. But there's an argument to say that Spain have never really been like that. They're full of superstars.
And I think that's the case. Actually, I think one of the things that has made them so good was sort of getting rid of that talisman sort of syndrome that a lot of teams suffer from. I mean, they famously dropped Raúl and then went on to win Euro 2008 soon after, and he was previously their kind of star name. I don't think they need one big player to play well. It's very much a collective thing with Spain, and the question is whether players like Iniesta, who he's had a good season for Barcelona, probably not one of his vintage ones, but he's getting older. So it's the question as whether they can sort of continue that.
Could be his last Euros.
Yeah, and whether they can integrate these younger players into the team. I think the case of someone like Morata is one of those sort of case studies that you can look at. Because he's had a fantastic year for Juventus, scored some extremely important goals. Also, the season before that was in their run to the Champions League final. And he struggled, I think, for Spain to really gel in that system, as have most strikers.
Well, do we think they'll play a striker, Keeno?
Well,
I feel like after the last tournament, they can't not play a striker. I feel like the age of tiki-taka, Spain, oh my gosh, they play the sexiest football, that's gone. A lot of those players, they're on their way out. Obviously, players like Xavi have gone. Iniesta, this is probably his last tournament. Busquets getting on a bit. There's a lot of new players coming into this Spain side who have performed in the league and proven themselves in systems that aren't the Barcelona way, which is something that wasn't the case going back a few tournaments now. You know, there was a Barcelona core to that side. And whilst there is that, obviously you can look at Busquets and Iniesta and Fabregas and say there is, you look beyond that, particularly out wide with players like Vasquez, Aduriz and Morata, players who haven't played in Spain, haven't been kind of nurtured in that kind of system. I feel like that's the kind of system that you can't drill into a team and into the bulk of a squad in a kind of a national team environment. And so I feel like there is a compromise to be made. And I'm curious to see how this team do, because I think the Spanish side is probably one of the best teams in terms of strength and depth. Whether or not you need that in the competition, I guess, is completely up for debate. But there's a lot of new players in there who we've not seen in a competition representing Spain before, based off how they performed.
I think particularly up front. I mean, Aduriz. You mentioned there's a lot of new players. They're not necessarily young players either. Players like San Jose from Bilbao, it is, who's only played a handful of times, and he's found his way in there, former centre-back. Obviously Aduriz, who's 35, who's had a fantastic season this year, and it's almost been like kind of a Jamie Vardy in the sense that
he was good last year, was he not, though? I feel like he's had a few good years now. Yeah,
but he's still pretty old. And also Nolito, who's 29, hasn't played at a major tournament, I don't think, with Spain before. Might have been in the squad for the World Cup.
I'm not sure. I mean, you've talked about Nolito. I was trying to bring him up. In the last two friendly, they've got another friendly. Like as we record, they still get to play Georgia. Spain have still got a friendly to play.
It's quite late.
Yeah, well, they don't play until the 13th, so they play quite deep into the tournament. But Nolito scored 4 in 2. He got 2 against Bosnia and 2 against South Korea. And interestingly, and maybe this will come down to it really, that Morata played against South Korea, got 2 goals. I think it was Aduriz played against Bosnia and didn't score. And I think that might play a little bit into the thinking that Morata will be the guy to start up front, especially if he's sort of a bit more in form as of right now. I think that might be key. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I think Nolito will probably definitely start now, which I don't think the start of the year you'd have got pretty good money on saying Nolito will start for Spain at the Euros. But I think it's difficult for them to drop him at this point. He's playing really well.
I think the evolution of Spain as a team under Del Bosque, sort of after this amazing sort of, almost 5, 6, 7, 8 years that they had, and this incredible generation of players, where they go next is absolutely fascinating, because it's very up in the air as to how they're going to go, because we mentioned at the beginning of their segment, we didn't really get to see what they were how they had evolved at the World Cup, because they were out so early. So yeah. It's very I think this is one of the most interesting sort of storylines of the tournament for me, is how well Spain are going to do and how they're going to develop. I think after this.
Sorry, Jack, go on.
I feel like for Spain, there's a big question mark about how they do against the big teams. I think people look back to that game against the Netherlands where they got absolutely spanked at the World Cup. But since then, they've had testing friendlies. That's clearly been something that they've wanted to work on. They've played Italy, Germany, and France.
They've played England as well, for God's sake.
And they've played England. They got, I think, 1 point from those 3 that I quoted there. Obviously, they did beat England, but it's England. But I feel like Italy, Germany, France, they're 3 teams which you expect to see go fairly far in this competition. If Spain come against one of them, based off the fact they're struggling in these friendlies, which have been the test of them and clearly are games they want to take seriously, I feel like Spain are going to go far this tournament. I just feel like they could get really unlucky, get drawn against a big team who finishes second in a group and be out, and will kind of sit there and there'll be this disappointment. I feel like with Spain there is so much in the way of expectation on them, not necessarily based off kind of their recent form and particularly obviously their World Cup, but just based off the fact it's Spain. They have won this competition the last 2 times. And I'm really excited to see how they do. I think it's a fascinating storyline that's kind of emerged with the Euros in general, but particularly kind of, I guess, reaching this point now.
Yeah, I think an interesting point to make just before we wrap up is that Diego Costa's not there, Torres isn't there, Mata's not there, Cazorla's not there, Isco's not there, Saul's not there. There's a lot of players that have been there before, maybe not Saul, but the rest of them have been there before and haven't made it this time, which shows, as you touched on before, strength in depth in the Spain team.
And it's funny, almost every one of those players you mentioned would walk into many other squads at the tournament.
Yeah. Shall I make a very bold prediction on the preview shows? Shouldn't do this. I know.
Note this down, listeners.
Croatia will win the group.
Boom.
There you go. Spain will come second.
Massive. Yeah. What's your reasoning behind that?
I honestly think Spain have an interesting team that won't click quick enough, and I think Croatia are already at that point. So I don't know actually when do they play each other. That could be key to what I've just said.
Last game.
Well, I think that will be good. Then that will be the decider.
Yeah. I think at that point, this is how stupid it is this year. At that point, both teams could well be through, which is annoying. But I think Croatia, I mean, they're down as the home team. I think that's an advantage. I'm joking, of course this is. I don't know, I just think Croatia will finish ahead of Spain. I think Spain are somewhat fortunate their first game against the Czech Republic, who I've already said are rubbish. But so obviously Croatia play Turkey first. Oh, I can't go back on it now, can I? Is it too late?
Yes.
No, too late.
Okay. Croatia to win the group and to finish third in the whole competition. That, though, brings us to the end. Any more points on any of the teams we mentioned? Do we think Spain's going to win it? I mean, I'll come to actually both of you. Spain, are they going to win it, Jack? The group?
Quarter-final loss against eventual finalists.
Oh, interesting. Keeno?
I think Spain could get to the quarters of the semis, but I agree that I don't think they'll have quite enough against the big sides.
Okay.
I mean, they are a big side, but, the other big sides.
Well, I can't wait for 2 months' time, a month and a half's time, when Czech Republic and Turkey get through this group, and I look like an idiot. Yeah. I look forward to it. That brings us to the end of this particular recording, though. We've got plenty of others available for you before and after this one, so do give them a listen. Do check them out. This has been the Group D preview, and thank you, Jack.
D for Dominoes. We're here.
D for Dominoes. It came halfway through. I mean, email them, Jack. You must have connections. And Keeno.
D for daring prediction,
thank you. K for Keeno. Thanks for being here.
I mean, this Group D.
How are you, Keeno? Just checking. It's been half an hour. Just making sure.
Still as good.
Excellent.
Still as good as ours. Right
then, that does bring us to the end. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please give it a rating on iTunes, give it a like on YouTube, and we will see you again for another one. We're Love with Care from Innocent Mention. Until next time, goodbye.
It's a sculpture of a gold Benji. It's perfection.
Keeno, I think you're going to have to be calling for an oxygen mask over here, my friend.